Hi everyone, welcome to my first ever instructional video. Ta-da! I went out and bought me a whiteboard and I got me some fancy markers. So we're going to give this a shot, okay everybody? Welcome along this journey. So here we go. Today we are talking about how to write the unit plan. Now this is the unit plan that is going along with your carousel assignment. So last week you presented your carousels and you were focusing on a specific progressive learning strategy. Some of you did experiential learning, some of you did inquiry-based learning, some of you did play-based learning, interdisciplinary learning. So you each had kind of an area of focus. So what you're going to do now is apply that area of focus to an actual unit plan. So there's a couple of pieces that we need to figure out before we move forward. So let's write on the board, shall we? So we're talking about the unit plan. The unit plan. Okay. So first of all, we need to identify what we are talking about when we're talking about a unit. Because a unit really can, we have certain ideas around what we think a unit is. But here's what I'm thinking we need to think about. We need to think about a unit as a learning cycle, okay? So anything that we would constitute as a learning cycle. Oops. So what do we mean by that? Can you see that? I don't know if you can really see that. Okay, I'm going to stick with the big markers then. Yay! A learning cycle, okay, is basically when we have, it includes a beginning, a middle, and an end, okay? That's what a learning cycle is. So, you have a beginning, middle, and end to a learning process. This can take various periods of time. It can be a month, it can be several weeks. I mean, technically it can even be a lesson, right? Every lesson is kind of broken down into a beginning, a middle, and an end. But here's what the point is of a learning cycle. The point is that in the beginning you have certain goals, right? So in a learning cycle, you're going to want students to be learning goals, right? So you're going to set out maybe some goals. What are the goals? What are the goals? What are the goals / learning objectives for this learning cycle? For the learning cycle, okay? Basically, what do you want them to learn? What do you want them to be learning? And in terms of that, and we're going to talk about how we figure that out, because really you're looking at kind of a couple of sources here to help you decide, what are the kids supposed to be learning here? And you have to think of it in two ways. You have to think of it in terms of content. What's the content they need to be learning? And what are the skills they need to be developing? Is it literacy skills, numeracy skills? Oh, again, with these, I gotta not use the thin markers, friends? Because they're really not coming out. So what's the content? The material, so to speak, the ideas, the new concepts, and what are the skills they're going to be learning, okay, in terms of the learning objectives. And we use, wait for it, curriculum documents to help us figure this out. What are they supposed to be? What does the curriculum say that they're supposed to be learning? So this is kind of like the pre-planning. You're planning this. What's the beginning of this learning cycle? At the beginning of the learning cycle, you need to kind of know what are the learning objectives. Okay? And then you also need to know when they learn this, what's that going to look like? How are they going to demonstrate their learning? What is the demonstration of that learning going to look like? And this is where we talk about the rich performance task, okay? So, in the end of this learning cycle, what is going to be the performance, the demonstration that aligns with the learning goals. Okay, so what are the kids going to do? What are the students, can you see that? What are the students going to create, perform, in order to demonstrate their achievement of the learning objectives. Okay? And this is where the idea of a rich performance task comes in, which we're going to talk about. Rich performance task. Okay? So you kind of you need to know the beginning and you need to know the end. The middle actually comes later because the middle is the actual doing the lessons. Is the actual lessons, and this is where your progressive learning model comes in. Because using inquiry-based learning, using experiential learning, using interdisciplinary learning, this is where you're going to fit that in terms of how you're going to get them from here to here. We're going to use that model to get us to actually get them to learn the objectives and the content. So this is where you're going to insert, this is the learning strategy. Learning strategy goes here. Okay? So, what you need to decide in your team, as your group, is what are the goals and objectives? What do we want them to be learning? What's the topic? What's the big idea? You're going to go to your curriculum documents and you're going to use that because this is going to inform how you decide on this. You got to figure out what's your length of time. Okay, what's this learning cycle look like? Various grades, it's going to look differently. The younger the grades, maybe the shorter. You're not going to spend necessarily a month on a given topic, and it also depends on the breadth of the topic. So you got to make some decisions here. You got to decide on the learning goals, you got to decide on your rich performance task, and then you got to decide kind of how long is that all going to take. Let's use green here. How long will this take? Will this learning cycle take? Okay, so now I'm going to start a new video, and I'm going to talk about what the actual unit plan is going to look like and what you're going to be creating and submitting to me for this assignment. Okay? Thanks, everybody. Hi, everyone. Okay, so this is part 2 of the unit plan instructional video series. Right now, I want to explain to you what it is you're actually writing or creating for this assignment. So there's several pieces. The first one, okay, so there's going to be 3 pieces. Let me just outline what this unit plan assignment actually needs to have. So 1, you're going to have an actual outline of the unit. 2, you're going to have the summative assignment, aka rich performance task, with the rubric, so you know how to be evaluating it with rubric. And the third thing you're going to submit is a calendar. And the calendar will indicate kind of the topics or the assessments. The calendar and by assessments I mean both formative and summative. Formative and summative assessments. Okay? So those are the 3 pieces that you will be submitting in this assignment. So let's talk about the outline of the actual unit. The outline can take any template. You can use any template you want. If you have one already, that's great. I will be uploading a template that I use, but again, you can take it or leave it. The point is that it has to include the same, whatever template you use has to include certain elements. So the elements of the unit plan, the actual unit plan needs to include the following. So the unit plan needs to include unit plan elements. Okay, so the elements need to, the first one it needs to include are the overall expectations from the curriculum document. So the overall expectations. Because these are the ones that need to be evaluated. Okay, we evaluate overall expectations. So you need to demonstrate in your unit plan that the assessments directly link back to overall expectations, okay? Because these need to be evaluated. Then you need to also have in the unit plan, you're going to have kind of an outline of the day-to-day, day 1, day 2, day 3, an outline of the day-to-day, but again, that's your middle piece, so that comes kind of after, but you're going to have an outline of daily activities. Now, here's the piece that you need to understand. You are not fully developing these lessons, okay? You are not. Because here's the reality. When you do a unit plan, you don't actually do all the lessons up front because, as you know, it's a day-by-day process, right? Some days you're going to get to what you wanted to get to. Some days you don't. Sometimes, it has to be fluid. So what you do have, though, is kind of an outline of where you want to be going, certainly day by day and certainly week by week. By week 1, we want to have accomplished this much. So it's it really is an outline of day 1, day 2, day 3. This is where we're headed. Okay? What you also are going to include in this are the assessment pieces. That's kind of the big piece here. You have to be including the assessments along the way. What are your checks that they're understanding, for their understanding? So you have to be formatives, definitely, for as learning. So we're going to be putting in our assessments along the way. Okay? And the quality and type of assessments really depend on the quality and type of the summative, the rich performance task, because you want to make sure that you're aligning your daily and weekly assessments and that they are developing the skills and the content that they need to know in order to achieve the rich performance task at the end, in order to do that, right? So this has to be aligned. We're going to talk about more about that in a second. The fourth piece that the unit plan needs to include, okay, ladies and gentlemen, is the learning skills. Actually, you know what? I'm going to write it over here. I'm going to just put it over here on this corner. I thought I was going to thought I was going to use the space differently, but that's okay. The fourth piece is you have to include, possibly here in the outline of your daily activities, is the 6 learning skills and habits, okay? We need to be intentional about these 6 learning skills and habits. They are to be assessed. We don't give marks for this, but we certainly give an assessment, an E for excellent, a G for good, an N for needs improvement, S for satisfactory, and N for needs improvement. So we need to be intentional about how we're designing our units, how we're designing our learning cycles, in order to be reflecting and giving the students opportunities to be demonstrating these. So what are they? Do we remember, everybody? What are the 6 learning skills? Collaboration, initiative, independence, organization, responsibility, and self-regulation. Okay, so these are the 6 learning skills and habits that we need to be embedding and being intentional about giving students opportunities to be demonstrating these 6. Okay, so somewhere in this outline, certainly in the daily activities. And you can also include these in your summatives. There's nothing to say that a part of the rubric of your summative could be a self-assessment of students saying, okay, when in completing this summative assignment, did I do these things? Do you know what I mean? There's no reason why we couldn't include that. So these are kind of the 4 pieces that need to be going into this unit plan. So let's look at what that actually might look like, okay? So what that might actually look like would be something like a template where you have your overall expectations. You might put your overall expectations in this column. You might have your specific expectations / learning goals in this column. And then you might have your daily plan, your daily activities, and assessments in this column, okay? So that you can see a clear alignment with your expectation, your overall. From one overall, you might get several specifics and learning objectives, and this might take a series of, in order to address these specific expectations and this one overall, that might take 4 or 5 days. This might take a week. So you might have day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And that's kind of in dealing with your first overall expectation. Then, overall expectation number 2. Because in a learning cycle, you might have 2 to 3 you might have 2 to 3 overall expectations. Okay? So, is this helpful? I hope this is helpful. Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to actually apply this to an area of focus. So I went quickly online. I wonder if I pull this out, if you could actually see this. My guess is you can't. So just listen to my voice and watch. So I went to the grade 2 curriculum because, as you all know, my eldest, Elliot, is in grade 2. So I thought, hey, why don't I see what he's supposed to be learning in the upcoming months? Very exciting. And so I went to the science and technology unit, everybody. And it's fantastic. There's this entire unit or entire strand called Understanding Earth and Space Systems, and they're looking specifically at air and water in the environment. Air and water in the environment. Okay? Environment. Now, check this out. Take this in, everybody. In this strand, there are 3. And I use the word strand and unit interchangeably because they can. A strand doesn't necessarily have to be a unit, but it's kind of, it's a clump of, a chunking of similar concepts. So in this strand, we have 3 overall expectations, okay? 1 is they have to assess ways in which the actions of humans have an impact on the quality of air and water, and ways in which the quality of air and water has an impact on living things. And ways in which the quality of air and water have an impact on living things. Okay? So basically, how do we impact the quality of air and water? And then how does that quality of air and water have an impact on us? Okay? Kind of cool. And you look at the specific expectations under this, really cool. It screams off the page. The rich performance task, once you get your head around what the overall expectations are, then you really have, you spend time with this because that's where your ideas, your creativity, and your ideas come from. Well, what does that look like in action? What are they actually going to do? And it's very helpful because check this out. Number 2, the other overall expectation in this strand is they have to investigate the characteristics. Investigate, okay? That already tells me they're doing some inquiry here. They're doing some experiments. And in fact, every specific expectation in this strand is experimentation. It's really cool. They actually have to go out and do stuff. Investigate the characteristics. Investigate the characteristics of air and water. And the visible and invisible effects. And the visible and invisible effects of and changes to air and water in the environment. Okay? Very cool. And then the third Third one is they basically have to demonstrate an understanding of the ways in which air and water are used by living things and how we use them to meet our needs. So they have to demonstrate an understanding. Demonstrate an understanding of the ways in which air and water are used to meet our basic needs. What I really think is cool about this, so this is basically your and if you look at the specific expectations in this strand, it's very, it's the basic knowledge stuff. What are the different types of air? Like what constitutes air? What constitutes water? What are the different elements of water? How does it change? This is kind of our basic understanding. And I love that this is third in the order, because that tells me that, it's not the most important. It isn't. It is the foundational. It's the base of, they have to learn these basic concepts of what air and water are. How do we use them? How do they meet our needs? Before they can go on to these things. But what's really cool, and I didn't know this about the curriculum until I was just looking at it today, is that the most important thing, the higher order thinking, the assessment, okay, demonstrating and understanding is, knowledge and understanding, okay? That's kind of your lower order thinking, demonstrating and understanding of. Then they got to investigate. This is thinking. This is maybe thinking and inquiry. But the assessment, okay, this is the higher order thinking stuff. This is where the kids have to be going to. They have to be able to assess our actions and how they have an impact, okay? This is telling me that they have to figure out, wow, we actually don't use air and water in very good ways. We don't treat it very well. We pollute. The issue of pollution, the issue of overconsumption of water in North America. That's what this is all about right here, friends. So this is telling me, already looking at this is telling me where this rich performance task has to go. This has to be, they maybe have to do a public service announcement. Maybe they have to they're going to host a panel discussion at their school. They're going to get experts in maybe and say, okay, how can we improve this? They're going to start a campaign of turn the water off, people. We got to turn that water off. So this is the exciting piece here, okay? And so by knowing what the curriculum is, it already tells you, it already gives you an idea of what that rich performance task needs to look like, which is the next video. What is a rich performance task, okay? Okay. Thank you. I hope this was helpful. I hope this kind of gives you a sense of how to use curriculum documents, because this is from here, then you extend to the specific expectations and the learning goals. Okay, everyone. So now we're going to talk about the rich performance task and what that means, and how we come up with that. So if we're going to build on the science unit on air and water. So we know that in that unit they need to be assessing, they need to be investigating, and they need to be demonstrating and understanding. Okay, those are kind of the three things they need to be doing in this unit. These are the overall expectations. So, what does that mean? Let's talk about what a rich performance task actually is. At the end of this unit, they need to be demonstrating these things. Now, units, you can do separate things. You can have some kind of a project, some kind of a demonstration of this individually. You can have them doing this individually. You can have them doing this individually, for sure. You can be doing smaller things, which may help lead to the rich performance task. That's actually not a bad idea. So say you were going to spend maybe the first week getting them to understand the basic concepts of air and water. So this might lead to, at the end of that, maybe a little check-in, a little quiz, or a little, I don't know, a little written piece, something that checks in here. So this is assessment number one, maybe assessment number one. This can be a formative or summative. In fact, I would recommend that it's formative, right? Not for marks, just a check. Okay, so we're going to call it a learning check. learning check, just to see if they've got the concepts, because they're going to be using this, showing this in the summative at the end in our rich performance task. So this is just assessment number 1. You're going to do a learning check maybe at the end of this week. Then you're going to send them off in the week 2, and they're going to go do a series of investigations. Maybe you're going to give them like an investigation log, an investigation log book, because every day for a week you're going to send them home and say, okay, I don't know, it's really cool. You got to read the specific expectations, but they have them like tracking water usage in their house. They have them tracking how much they drive, how much their parents drive. And so they're doing all these little mini investigations that week. So you give them an investigation logbook, let's say. And then the assessing piece, then when we start talking about, okay, what's the impact that we're having? Then this might be more of a reflective written piece. Maybe you're giving them issues. Maybe we're investigating some issues. And so they're going to be writing kind of, because in assessing, right, assessment means critically thinking about it. So you have to give them something that allows them to critically think. So maybe they're going to write some reflective pieces. They're going to do some reflective writing pieces. Okay? What do we think about this, everybody? And this is where we might have class conversations. And then at the end of the class conversations, okay, everybody, do the writing derby. Write for an hour, for a minute. Write whatever you think about. What questions does this raise? Okay? So these are all checking assessment number 2, assessment number 2, and assessment number 3. So you're checking for learning throughout. Now, here's the point. This all needs to lead to a big piece at the end. This is our rich performance task. Now, we keep using this word rich and performance, and I know that we had this in our classroom. We had that chart paper, and you were writing things on there, and you were thinking about this. So let's consolidate some of that thinking. Now, I'm going to just move this over. Oh, did I move that over the wrong way? I think I might have moved that over the wrong way. I did. Okay, I'm learning. So here's what we know about a rich performance task. Here's what we know. We know, okay, we call it rich, friends. Maybe I should go with black, eh? Should I go with black? We call it rich PT, because it hits multiple levels of intelligences, right? We go from the basic demonstrating and understanding to inquiry to assessing, which requires application, communication, and application. So it's involving all 4 of the KICA, which it's important for you to know, and you're not necessarily assessing KICA in the elementary stages, but you're definitely building it in so that when they do get into secondary, it's not this foreign concept. You've been developing these 4 skills. So it involves them to demonstrate all 4: knowledge and understanding, thinking and inquiry, communication, and application. Okay, so that's kind of one feature of a rich performance task. The other feature of a rich performance task, in my mind, is that it gets the students, and this is where the application piece really comes in, so I might just draw an arrow from that. It invites the students to address a real world problem, okay? That's the exciting part of this. Because if we're not actually using the learning and applying it to real world life, how are we going to fix this, people? What's the problem? What can we do to fix this problem of pollution and overconsumption of water? This is the exciting piece. This is the learning in action, the experiential piece, or the inquiry. They're asking the question and now they're going to put it into action. So they have to be addressing, so in some way they are addressing a real world problem. Okay? That's kind of the big piece for this. And they're engaging with the real world. They got to be engaging with the real world. So this gets them out of the classroom. Okay? It makes the learning bigger than just the classroom. So maybe maybe they're going to community leaders, they're talking to different people, they're interviewing people, they're creating an assignment or a project that has them going to different classes or starting a school-wide campaign. Think big, think outside the classroom, and so that they're actually putting to use these 4 levels of thinking and inquiry and community, these 4 skills and learning, and they're doing something with it. So because it's going to be, so it's multi-layered, Okay, so you're getting a sense that it's rich because it's multi-layered, it's multi-dimensional. It can be individual, it can be a group activity, group assignment. It's very project-based, as you can probably understand. It's kind of project-based, although, either way, project-based can be individual or group. Sorry, I got confused there a minute. So this is kind of the idea. So when you're thinking about this assignment, you have to really take into consideration your learning model, right? So if you're doing inquiry-based learning model, then of course maybe their rich performance task is going to be an inquiry, maybe similar to the action research project that you're working on for this class. What's your question? What's your investigation? Using the investigation skills that you learned back here in this week when we were looking at investigation, using these pieces, because that's the other thing. Oh, thank you for reminding me. You have the rich performance task, these assessment pieces in between, in the daily demonstration or the weekly demonstration of learning, these have to feed into this. And by feed into this, I mean that these are building on the same content and skills that they're going to be then reproducing and using again for marks in the rich performance task. Because here's the thing: what do we know about learning, friends? What do we know? What have we learned so far about learning? That it takes time and practice. So just because they did it once, I lost my eraser somewhere. Just because they did it once doesn't mean they're experts at it, right? Just because they did this investigation log for a week doesn't mean they're experts at it. That's why you give the feedback. In between this and this is where you're going to be giving feedback. So that when it comes to the performance task that's for marks, they have an opportunity to perfect or get better at whatever skill you were learning, whatever gaps in their learning that you've assessed here. Well, now they're going to fill those gaps based on the feedback you gave them, and they're going to implement it here, and there will be no gaps. See what I'm saying? So that's why it's important that these have to be aligned with this. So you almost can't decide what these are until you know what the big piece is at the end, okay? What's the big demonstration piece that they're going to do at the end? Because then from this, okay, then we got to build in. So these are kind of the bookends, right? These are the bookends. What are the things that they get? What are the overall expectations? They got to do that. Beautiful. I totally see them doing a campaign, a school-wide campaign. That's fantastic. And then, because you know what this is and you know what these are, you build a rubric to reflect the overall expectations. Okay, the rubric that you're using to evaluate this assignment, this task, is directly related because remember, friends, these are the things we're supposed to be evaluating. So their level of their degree of success at being able to assess the impact that humans have on the quality of air and water, and then in turn, what impact that quality of air and water have on us. That's what you're assessing. That's what you're assessing. You could be also assessing the learning habits and the skills, but again, those don't feed into marks. Okay? But your rubric is going to reflect 1, 2, 3, the overall expectations. We call that assessing by expectation. Very, very important. Okay? You're going to assess by expectation. Okay? So you can actually tell the parent at parent-teacher interview, your child has a very strong understanding of the qualities of air and water, has very good investigation skills, but we're still working on their ability to assess the impact, the critical thinking piece. We're still working on that. See what I mean? This makes the learning very visible. What the child can and cannot do, and to what extent they can do it. This is exciting stuff, and this all comes from this rich performance task that is directly aligned with these things. Isn't this fun? I hope this is making sense to you all. Then of course, the calendar, then you implement the calendar on top of all this, because then you say, okay, in order for them to do a school-wide campaign, how long is that going to take? We're going to need at least 3 weeks to plan that, to work on that, for them to learn the knowledge, the investigative skills, and then the assessment piece. They're going to need at least 3 weeks, right? So then the calendar comes on top of that, and then you're building in the mini assessments in between. Oh, I think this looks wonderful. I want to go teach this unit. So this would be such an awesome unit to teach. So much fun. And then the kids are being activists. We're creating little activists. I hope this was helpful, everybody. Please let me know. Please email me back. I'm going to post these now because I'm going to figure out how I actually now convert these videos. into MP4s, and I'm going to put them on the Moodle, and I'm really excited about this. So please let me know if you have any questions. Oh, last piece before I go. Here's what you need to know. So for next week, when you are submitting this unit plan, so you're going to submit the three pieces. You're going to submit the unit plan outline. You're going to submit the assessment. The actual assignment that this is. It'll have an assignment sheet with the rubric that you're going to create, and you're going to submit that with your unit plan. And then you're going to submit a calendar that's going to indicate when these smaller formative assessment pieces are going to be put in place. Keeping in mind, these are going to be a series of there's going to be done by either the teacher. You're also maybe going to include some peer and self-assessments, okay? Because we want to be seeing assessment for, and this is assessment for and assessment as learning. This is your assessment as learning. This is for. This culminating, that's for marks, is of learning, okay? So you want to indicate that as well somewhere. I'm going to give you the template that I've had filled out, that I've created, and that'll kind of give you a sense because it indicates which assessments are for, as of. Lastly, so you're going to be submitting those three pieces next week. Now, keep in mind, don't worry about making it perfect. If you have a sense of it, just submit that, and then I'll give you feedback. There's time. We can play with the time. So don't feel like it has to be absolutely perfect before you can submit it next week. If it's a work in progress, great. Give me what you got. Give me what the ideas that you're working on as a group. This is kind of what we're working on. This is how it's looking so far, and then I will give you feedback, okay? So it can be a conversation back and forth. Just start on it and see where you go. Have the conversation in your groups. Start. That's the best way to do it, is just to get down and do it. Get the curriculum document in front of you and just begin. So have fun. I hope this is a great learning experience for you. I will also be uploading the rubric for this unit plan assignment, like your rubric, how you will be evaluated on these three things, on the outline, the summative, and what else? And the calendar, okay? So good luck, everyone. Let me know how it goes. Please email me. I hope this was really helpful, and we'll see you next week. Bye.